She was stuck. A familiar, frustrating feeling settled in her bones. A heavy weight anchoring her to a life that felt less like a journey and more like a repetitive loop. The same relationships, the same financial struggles, the same emotional patterns played out day after day, a monotonous soundtrack to her existence. She'd tried everything: journaling, visualization, even desperate pleas to a seemingly indifferent universe. But each morning, the same reality awaited her, a stark reminder of her perceived powerlessness. She'd poured her heart into self-help books, diligently following each suggested technique. She'd created elaborate vision boards, picturing a life brimming with joy, abundance, and fulfilling connections. She'd meditated for hours, trying to quiet the relentless chatter of her mind, attempting to align her thoughts with her desires. Yet, the external world remained stubbornly unchanged, a mirror reflecting back the same frustrating image. The weight of her unfulfilled hopes pressed down on her, a constant, dull ache in her chest. She felt like she was trapped in a scene from a movie she hadn't written, a helpless spectator to her own life. One night, amidst the swirling chaos of her thoughts, a subtle shift occurred. Exhausted from the relentless struggle, she simply stopped. She ceased the frantic striving, the desperate pleas, the constant mental rearranging. Instead, she chose to observe. Not with hope, not with fear, but with a quiet, neutral presence. It wasn't a deliberate choice, but rather a natural consequence of her utter fatigue. Her resistance had finally given way to acceptance, not as a surrender, but as a moment of clarity. In that space of stillness, something unexpected happened. It wasn't a dramatic shift in her external circumstances. Her apartment remained the same, her bank account didn't magically swell, and her relationships didn't suddenly transform. The change was internal, subtle yet profound. It was in her relationship with her reality that a transformation began. The tight grip of expectation loosened. The frantic grasping for control eased. She was no longer attempting to manifest a different life. She was simply observing the current reality without judgment, without resistance, without the desperate need for it to conform to her wishes. She noticed the feeling of sunlight on her skin, the gentle rhythm of her breath, and the quiet murmur of the city outside her window. In these simple observations, she found a profound sense of peace. She felt lighter, freer. It was like releasing a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The quiet hum of the city, once a source of irritation, now felt like a comforting embrace. The persistent nagging thoughts in her mind, once a cacophony of self-criticism and doubt, now faded into the background. She found a surprising tranquility in simply acknowledging the present moment, without the desperate need to alter or improve it. She found herself paying attention to the smallest details: the way the moonlight streamed through her window, the delicate scent of lavender from her candle, the gentle warmth of her blanket. These small details, once overlooked in her fervent pursuit of change, now seemed to hold a hidden beauty, a quiet wonder. The simple act of observing, without judgment or expectation, began to reshape her perception of reality. It was a slow, almost imperceptible shift, but it was undeniable. This shift in perspective felt strange, almost unnerving at first. She had become accustomed to the turmoil of her inner world, the relentless striving, the desperate need to change her external circumstances. This quiet stillness, this neutral observation, was an unfamiliar territory. But in this unfamiliar space, she was beginning to see something new, something she hadn't been able to perceive amidst the chaos of her striving. She was beginning to see the potential inherent in every moment, the infinite possibilities held within the fabric of her reality. She was no longer a victim of circumstance, but a participant in her own creation. It was a shift from passive acceptance to active awareness, from being acted upon to being the one who acts, not through frantic doing, but through focused, observant being. The quiet hum of the city outside her window no longer grated on her. It was simply a sound, existing in the vast landscape of her awareness. The party of the bustling city, once a sound that irritated her, now felt like a comforting embrace. The persistent nagging thoughts in her mind, once a cacophony of self-criticism and doubt, now faded into the background. She found a surprising tranquility in simply acknowledging the present moment, without the desperate need to alter or improve it. She found herself paying attention to the smallest details, the way the moonlight streamed through her window, the delicate scent of lavender from her candle, the gentle warmth of her blanket. These small details, once overlooked in her fervent pursuit of change, now seemed to hold a hidden beauty, a quiet wonder. The simple act of observing, without judgment or expectation, began to reshape her perception of reality. It was a slow, almost imperceptible shift, but it was undeniable. This shift in perspective felt strange, almost unnerving at first. She had become accustomed to the turmoil of her inner world, the relentless striving, the desperate need to change her external circumstances. This quiet stillness, this neutral observation, was an unfamiliar territory. But in this unfamiliar space, she was beginning to see something new, something she hadn't been able to perceive amidst the chaos of her striving. She was beginning to see the potential in every moment, the infinite possibilities held within the fabric of her reality. She was no longer a victim of circumstance, but a participant in her own creation. It was a shift from passive acceptance to active awareness, from being acted upon to being the one who acts, not through frantic doing, but through focused, observant being. The quiet hum of the city outside her window no longer grated on her. It was simply a sound, existing in the vast landscape of her awareness. The old patterns of thought and feeling that had dominated her life for so long seemed to lose their grip, gradually dissolving into the vastness of her newfound awareness. It was not as if the challenges in her life vanished overnight, but their power to upset her, to dictate her emotional state, was significantly diminished. The emotional intensity that once accompanied her fears and frustrations began to lessen, replaced by a quiet acceptance, an unwavering sense of inner peace. The old scripts that had played out repeatedly in her life no longer seemed so compelling. She was free to write new ones. The sense of being trapped, of being a mere spectator in her own life, began to fade. She started to recognize herself as the active agent in her life, not simply a reactor to external circumstances, but a participant in her own creation. This realization was not a sudden epiphany, but a gradual unfolding, a subtle yet profound shift in her perception of reality. Her awareness wasn't just about her outer world. It was about the subtle, powerful shifts within her own consciousness, within her own observation. This was where the change started. This where her power resided. And that power, she realized, was more profound and more transformative than she could ever imagine. The feeling of being stuck, that heavy weight that had anchored her to a life of repetition, started to lighten. It was replaced by a burgeoning sense of possibility, a quiet confidence that her journey, despite its bumps and detours, was heading somewhere, that she had the power to shape its course. She was no longer just living her life. She was consciously creating it, one observation at a time. The road ahead was still unknown, still full of challenges and uncertainties, but she walked forward with a new sense of lightness, a new sense of grace, a new sense of empowerment. The journey had just begun. The quiet revolution within her didn't magically erase her problems. The financial anxieties remained, the lingering loneliness persisted, and the echoes of past hurts still occasionally surfaced. But something had fundamentally shifted. It wasn't that the external challenges disappeared. It was her relationship with them that transformed. She no longer reacted to them with the same frantic energy, the same desperate attempts to control or escape. Instead, she met them with a quiet, observant presence.
It was like learning a new language, the language of non-reactive awareness. She began to notice the subtle nuances of her own observation. When faced with a financial setback, for example, she found herself noticing the tightening in her chest, the familiar knot of fear in her stomach. But instead of letting the fear consume her, she simply observed it, acknowledging its presence without judgment. She saw it as a signal, not as a sentence. She acknowledged the discomfort, the anxiety, the familiar urge to panic, but she didn't let it dictate her actions, her thoughts, or her emotional state. She simply witnessed it. She breathed into it. She let it be. This new approach wasn't about suppressing or ignoring her emotions. It was about creating a space between her feelings and her reactions. It was about observing her emotional landscape with the same detached curiosity she might use to observe.
She started keeping a detailed journal, chronicling not only her external experiences, but also the subtle shifts in her inner world. This practice of mindful observation extended beyond her finances. She began to notice the same patterns in her relationships. The old insecurities, the ingrained fears of abandonment or rejection still surfaced occasionally, but her response had changed. Instead of reacting defensively, she simply observed the fear, acknowledging its presence without judgment or self-recrimination. She recognized these emotional patterns as echoes of past experiences, not as predictions of future outcomes. She saw them as data points, valuable information about her own internal landscape. This process of self-observation wasn't always easy. There were moments of frustration, moments of doubt, moments when the old patterns threatened to reclaim their hold. But each time, she gently redirected her attention back to the practice of non-reactive awareness. She practiced mindfulness not as a technique to achieve a specific outcome, but as a way of being, a way of inhabiting her own experience with greater clarity and compassion. The process became a form of self-inquiry. She started asking herself powerful questions. What am I observing? What am I feeling? What is the energetic quality of my observation? How does this observation shape my reality? These questions became her compass, guiding her towards a deeper understanding of herself and her relationship with the world around her. One unexpected benefit of this self-inquiry was a newfound sense of compassion, not only for herself, but also for others. She began to see her past traumas, her ingrained fears, and her recurring patterns not as flaws to be eradicated, but as integral parts of her story. The old narratives that had defined her identity began to lose their grip. They were still there, part of her history, but they no longer controlled her future. Her understanding of the observer effect deepened. She realized it wasn't just about passively observing the world, it was about actively shaping her reality through the quality of her attention. She began to experiment with this concept, intentionally shifting her focus towards positive aspects of her life, even in the midst of challenges. She focused on the small moments of joy, the simple pleasures, the acts of kindness, both received and given. She found that by consciously observing these moments, she amplified their impact, creating a ripple effect of positivity in her life. The more she focused on these positive aspects, the less power the negative patterns seemed to have. It was like consciously choosing the channel on her internal television, selecting the programs that nurture and uplifted her, rather than those that kept her stuck in negativity. Her relationships began to transform. She noticed that her interactions with others were no longer colored by her past traumas or her ingrained fears. She was able to approach her connections with a greater sense of openness, authenticity, and empathy. She had not magically become free of her past emotional baggage, but she was learning to navigate it with greater awareness and sensitivity. Her relationships became richer and deeper, filled with a sense of trust and understanding that had been previously absent. The financial anxieties she had experienced were not completely erased, but her relationship with money shifted. She was no longer ruled by fear and scarcity. Instead, she began to observe her financial situation with a new sense of calm awareness. She understood that her perception of money was as important as the amount she actually had. By consciously focusing on gratitude for what she had, instead of lamenting what she lacked, she shifted her energetic frequency, creating a space for new opportunities and possibilities to arise. This wasn't about quick fixes or overnight transformations. It was a gradual, ongoing process of self-discovery, a journey of conscious creation. She learned to honor her emotions, to embrace her imperfections, and to trust the inherent wisdom of her inner self. The path wasn't always smooth. There were still moments of doubt, frustration, and fear. But now she had the tools to navigate these moments with greater clarity, compassion, and a newfound sense of inner strength and power. She was no longer a passive observer of her life, but an active participant in its creation, a conscious creator of her own reality, one mindful observation at a time. The shift wasn't just about changing what she saw, it was about changing how she saw. And that, she realized, was the key to unlocking her true potential. The world she knew was still full of uncertainty and challenges, but she faced them not with fear, but with a growing sense of trust, a quiet confidence in her ability to navigate any storm. The change, she realized, was not a destination, a process, an ongoing journey of self-discovery and conscious creation. And it was a journey she was ready to embrace, step by step, one mindful observation at a time. As she continued her journey of conscious observation, she realized that her external world was a mirror reflecting her internal state. The people she encountered, the situations she experienced, the challenges she faced, all were reflections of her dominant energetic frequency. This wasn't about blaming herself for her circumstances, it was about understanding the profound connection between her inner world and her outer reality. She started to see patterns in the people she attracted into her life, recognizing how their behaviors mirrored her own subconscious beliefs and expectations. For instance, she noticed a recurring pattern of attracting partners who were emotionally unavailable. Initially, she had reacted to this with frustration and self-blame. But as she deepened her practice of conscious observation, she realized that she subconsciously attracted these partners because she carried her own deep-seated beliefs about unworthiness and unlovable. The emotionally unavailable partners were a reflection of her own internal state, a manifestation of her own unconscious programming. This realization was not a condemnation, but a liberation. It provided her with an opportunity to address the underlying issues, to heal the wounds that fueled her patterns of attraction. She began to work on cultivating self-love and self-acceptance, recognizing her inherent worthiness and embracing her vulnerabilities. This was not a quick fix. It required ongoing work, self-compassion, and a willingness to confront her own shadows. But as she made progress, the patterns began to change. She started attracting partners who were more emotionally available, more nurturing, more supportive. This wasn't because the universe suddenly decided to reward her efforts, it was because she had shifted her energetic frequency, aligning her inner world with her desires. She had become a conscious co-creator of her own reality, not through magical thinking, but through consistent self-awareness and self-improvement. Similarly, she noticed patterns in her professional life. She had often found herself in situations where she felt undervalued or underappreciated. Through conscious observation, she realized that she was subconsciously accepting these roles because she had ingrained beliefs about her own limitations. She was holding herself back, limiting her potential by projecting her own self-doubt onto the world. Once again, this understanding wasn't about blaming herself, it was about recognizing the power of her own perceptions. She began to challenge her limiting beliefs, setting boundaries, and advocating for her own needs and desires. She started to see herself as capable, worthy, and deserving of success. This shift in her inner perception manifested externally in the form of increased opportunities, recognition, and ultimately professional fulfillment. This process of self-discovery extended to all areas of her life. She noticed how her thoughts, beliefs, and emotions shaped her experiences, influencing everything from her health and well-being to her relationships and financial stability. The more she consciously observed these patterns, the more she understood the power of her own mind to shape her reality. She began to see challenges not as obstacles but as opportunities for growth and transformation. She embraced setbacks not with despair but with curiosity, seeking to understand the lessons they offered. She found that the experiences she had once viewed as failures became valuable teachers, helping her to refine her perspective and deepen her understanding of herself. The practice of conscious observation also extended to the small details of her everyday life. She became more attentive to her thoughts, her feelings, her physical sensations. She noticed how her body responded to different situations, how her energy shifted in response to various stimuli. This deepened her awareness of her own energetic signature, helping her to understand how her internal state impacted her external experiences. She developed a greater appreciation for the power of presence, for the ability to be fully engaged in the present moment without the distractions of the past or the anxieties of the future. She found that when she was fully present, her observation became sharper, her perceptions clearer. She also began to understand the importance of gratitude. She realized that focusing on what she appreciated rather than what she lacked shifted her energetic frequency, creating a more positive and abundant reality. The practice of gratitude wasn't about ignoring challenges or pretending they didn't exist. It was about cultivating an attitude of appreciation for the good in her life, even amidst difficulties. The transformation was not sudden or dramatic, but gradual and profound. It was a journey of self-discovery, a process of refining her awareness and deepening her understanding of the interconnectedness of her inner and outer worlds. Her journey wasn't about forcing or manipulating reality, but about aligning her inner world with her desires, becoming a conscious participant in the creation of her life. The more consciously she observed, the more empowered she felt, the more she understood the true depth of her own power to shape her destiny. Her world became not just a reflection of herself, but a creation born from her own mindful attention, an intentional weaving of her thoughts, feelings, and actions into the fabric of her existence. She was no longer a passive participant in her life story. She was the author, and the story was still unfolding, beautifully, unexpectedly, one conscious observation at a time. With each passing day, her understanding of the observer effect deepened, transforming not only her personal life but also her perspective on the world. She began to see the interconnectedness of all things, recognizing that her actions, thoughts, and emotions had a ripple effect, impacting not only herself but also those around her. This realization fostered a profound sense of responsibility, a commitment to living with greater intention and awareness. She started paying more attention to the language she used, both internally and externally. She became more mindful of the words she chose, recognizing their power to shape her thoughts, feelings, and ultimately her reality. She replaced limiting self-talk with affirmations that empowered her, replacing phrases like "I can't" with "I can" and "I'll try" with "I will." This seemingly small shift had a significant impact on her mindset, fostering a sense of self-belief and determination. She extended this mindful approach to her interactions with others, choosing words that were kind, compassionate, and uplifting. She became more intentional in her communication, striving to create connections that were meaningful, authentic, and supportive. She realized that her words, like her thoughts and emotions, had the power to shape the energy of her interactions, creating positive ripples in her relationships and community. Her newfound awareness also influenced her choices. She became more discerning in her decision-making, choosing experiences and opportunities that aligned with her values and aspirations. She learned to say no to things that didn't serve her highest good, creating space for experiences that nurtured her growth and well-being. This ability to discern and choose wisely became a powerful tool for creating a life that was both purposeful and fulfilling. Her understanding of the observer effect extended beyond her personal life, influencing her perspective on world events and global issues. She recognized that collective consciousness played a significant role in shaping reality, and that her individual actions, however small, contributed to the larger tapestry of human experience. This realization fostered a profound sense of responsibility, a commitment to living with greater intention and awareness. She started paying more attention to the language she used, both internally and externally. She became more mindful of the words she chose, recognizing their power to shape her thoughts, feelings, and ultimately her reality. She replaced limiting self-talk with affirmations that empowered her, replacing phrases like "I can't" with "I can" and "I'll try" with "I will." This seemingly small shift had a significant impact on her mindset, fostering a sense of self-belief and determination. She extended this mindful approach to her interactions with others, choosing words that were kind, compassionate, and uplifting. She became more intentional in her communication, striving to create connections that were meaningful, authentic, and supportive. She realized that her words, like her thoughts and emotions, had the power to shape the energy of her interactions, creating positive ripples in her relationships and community. Her newfound awareness also influenced her choices. She became more discerning in her decision-making, choosing experiences and opportunities that aligned with her values and aspirations. She learned to say no to things that didn't serve her highest good, creating space for experiences that nurtured her growth and well-being. This ability to discern and choose wisely became a powerful tool for creating a life that was both purposeful and fulfilling. Her understanding of the observer effect extended beyond her personal life, influencing her perspective on world events and global issues. She recognized that collective consciousness played a significant role in shaping reality, and that her individual actions, however small, contributed to the larger tapestry of human experience. This realization fueled her commitment to living a life of purpose, contributing to the betterment of the world in her own small but significant ways. She actively sought opportunities to engage in acts of kindness and compassion, contributing to her community and working towards creating a more positive and equitable world. She understood that her actions, however small, had the power to influence the collective energy field, helping to create a more harmonious and uplifting reality for all. She became a conscious co-creator, not just of her personal reality, but of the shared reality we all inhabit. This journey of conscious observation wasn't about achieving some perfect state of being or attaining some ultimate goal. It was an ongoing process of learning, growing, and evolving. It was about embracing imperfections, acknowledging vulnerabilities, and continuously refining her awareness. It was a journey of self-discovery, a path of continuous refinement, a process of becoming. She discovered that the greatest power she possessed was not the ability to control her external circumstances, but the ability to master her internal state. This involved cultivating inner peace, cultivating self-compassion, and maintaining a consistent focus on gratitude. By consistently directing her attention toward these positive qualities, she created a positive feedback loop, attracting more positive experiences into her life. As she continued to integrate her understanding of the observer effect into her daily life, she found that her relationship with time shifted. She no longer felt the urgency or pressure to achieve certain goals within specific timelines. Instead, she embraced a sense of spaciousness and ease, trusting that the universe would provide what she needed when she needed it. This sense of trust fostered a deep inner peace, freeing her from the anxieties and frustrations of striving and struggling. The old patterns of fear, doubt, and self-criticism still occasionally surfaced, but their power to control her was diminished. She met these challenges with greater self-awareness and compassion, acknowledging their presence without judgment or self-recrimination. She understood that these patterns were simply part of her journey, opportunities for continued growth and evolution. She understood now that her life was not just a collection of events and circumstances, but a tapestry woven from her thoughts, emotions, and actions. And it was a tapestry she was continuously creating, consciously, intentionally, and with ever-growing awareness. Her journey wasn't a destination, but a process, a continuous unfolding of her own unique potential, a reflection of her ever-evolving relationship with herself and the world. And she looked forward to what that unfolding would bring. The observer effect, once a scientific principle, had become her life's philosophy, her guiding light, and her most powerful tool for creating a life of purpose, joy, and authentic fulfillment.